The world is telling us as men to be common, to fall in line, to fall short of any visions or plans God has for us. But what about being uncommon? This is a movement of men seeking to build an eternal legacy. A journey of men on mission to rise above the common, to experience sustainable life change. This is Uncommon Disciple. Welcome to the Uncommon Disciple podcast. My name is Michael Bowen, and with us back for a second time is a good friend of mine. Came up from the Springs, but went to Littleton, came back, Matt Stack. You can read his bio on episode 33, I think it was. And he's an author, veteran, just an all-around good dude. And so I'm thankful to have him back. So welcome back, Matt.
Thanks, man. It's good to see you, bro.
Good
Been a minute.
You. Yeah, we were trying to catch up before the podcast, and I said, let's just talk about what God's been doing in your life up until this point, and maybe dig more into your book, and just introduce you to another book that I think is right down your line of what you're doing. And
I love
God's
it.
Called you to do.
And so, the book you mentioned, The Mountain Is You, Transforming Self-Sabotage into Self-Mastery. I'd like to think that I was the first one who kind of landed on this idea of the self-sabotage, but I'm not. It's been around for centuries, and so, but to see that it's coming out more in the light now and seeing how God heals people from it, I remember when I first got into this, a pastor asked me, they said, "Oh, is this your ministry? Do you feel like this is your calling?" And at the time, I had just written the book. I remember thinking, I don't know. And the more I'm involved in it, the more I do it, the more we see people healed. It's like, it's become our calling. It's become our ministry.
Your book is Killing Chaos.
Killing Chaos. How veterans can win the war they didn't even know they were fighting. And so there's a long journey to that. But it's been amazing to see what God's doing.
And for those of you that listening, if you want a quick read, something that's going to bless you and encourage you, especially if you're a veteran, I love what Matt did with the book, and something I went back and just reviewed it again, just because, and I had forgotten that you kind of preach the gospel at the front end of that book.
Oh yeah.
Before you get into the meat of, how to, transition through the military back into civilian life, and kind of undoing everything that maybe was causing you harm when you were in. Right?
Fully.
That we just were able to forget about. Because we were so focused on mission or, with whatever we were doing in the military.
Yes. I mean, if you look at how the military is designed, they break us down. Everything is designed to incorporate it into a unit, a single body, get everything done, follow orders, and they're able to take teenagers, little nasty teenagers, and turn them into warriors and a fighting force. But they've neglected the back end. So now guys are just getting out with no means to do anything, to know what to do. I'd say this all the time, but let's be honest, the moment you tell your unit you're getting out, you're dead to them. Like they don't care. You're out of the club.
Well, I remember when I was getting out, the scare tactic was, oh, you're never going to find a job. And, you this or that. And, the military's the safest thing. And I don't know if I wanted safe at the time.
Right. Same.
I didn't feel necessarily safe. I felt like, I knew I was going to get fed and have a roof over my head, but never knew what I was going into next.
Oh, man.
But I did carry a lot of that out, that not knowing what was going to happen next.
Yes.
Almost craving that lifestyle when I left the service.
100%. In fact, the whole premise of this, what we talked about in the first part, was the self-sabotage factor. It was like when guys get out, girls get out, they don't realize how addicted to that kind of life they get used to. So the military trains us to be okay in environments where things go wrong.
For sure.
You're not this whatever part didn't come, this order didn't come, this thing, now this attack happens. So you're just always in this environment of preparedness, and we're taught if you're in a quiet room or something's too quiet, something bad is about to happen. And so we're all trained that to be
don't get comfortable in the quiet.
Get comfortable in the quiet.
Yeah.
And so what happens when you don't have a transition out and you carry that mindset into the civilian life? You will be tricked into thinking everything's a threat. And the way that you do it is by destroying things around you. And then you go even deeper. One thing we talked about, something we've done, is as we worked with more veterans, the ones who've had survival mechanisms activated as their childhood, where the fight or flight response is constantly activated, they're unable to recognize healthy relationships. So they get into like a relationship with like a normal, healthy, processing human being, and they feel like something's wrong.
Yep.
And they will destroy it.
Yeah.
And then find out later it was them.
Well, it's right before this podcast, I had a phone call with a new mentor of mine and therapist, trained and qualified. And I still, once a week, I talk to him, just about these things. But, one of the things we were talking about was relationships. Everyone that knows me kind of knows this about me. I try to be a little bit better than I was yesterday.
Yes.
And sometimes I take 10 steps back, just to get to 11 steps forward. But I'm always on this journey of like, hey, if there's a problem, it usually starts with me.
Yeah.
Just learn that from extreme ownership, just being a dad and a grandfather and a husband, for many years. But, we were talking about this fact that, I didn't know what a healthy relationship looked like.
Right. You have to.
You
have to know.
Because I grew up in that fight or flight, a lot of chaos, a lot of, physical and emotional abuse growing up. And now, even being married 20 years, I'm still learning how to have like, okay, this is healthy.
Same, bro.
Yeah.
Same.
This is a healthy relationship.
Dude,
don't mess it up.
You could preach a whole message just on this
just
right
like
there.
What you said, sometimes I just try to create something.
Yes.
Just that, not because it's fun, but because it's like, this is too good to be true.
And it's scary.
How can I trust or love someone this much? And they're just going to hurt me, or, this is just going to end anyway. I was talking to a guy yesterday at the Jiu-Jitsu Academy, and it hurt me so bad because I've known him for a couple of years now. And, we don't hang out an awful lot except at the academy. But he put his running backpack on, and I was like, oh, you're going for a run? He's like, yeah, I'm going to run back to my apartment. And this dude lives in a house, like nice house. Gigi's been over there. And he's like, oh, yeah, I just got divorced. And he's a believer.
Oh, right? My gosh.
Former military guy. And I was devastated, because here he is in his late 30s, and this is now probably the fourth or fifth guy at this age group. And there's a couple of guys I could mention their names and you would know them.
Wow.
That kind of gotten divorced at the same age.
Yeah.
And what I've learned, and I was talking to my wife about this, is, we went through some turbulent times these last few years. Even earlier this year when Mr. Dave was sick and passed away, we went through a really, really, low point in our relationship. But she's experiencing hormonal changes that she didn't realize she was experiencing.
Absolutely.
She's acting differently. I'm responding to it in a way that I wouldn't normally respond to it because I'm not used to it. But she's going through like perimenopause and, there's these, hormone shifts going on in their body. And I'm a big believer, man, that like, make sure your hormones are balanced. As we get older, testosterone goes down. Just go out and get checked.
Yep.
Make sure that everything is balanced out, because that can have a major impact on your feelings and emotions and the way that you interact and act with people.
Yes.
So I took the burden upon myself, as we were, she went and did her thing, got her blood work. But I said, I need to learn more about this. So I started studying like perimenopause and, hormonal changes, because, listen, 20 years is a long time to invest in a relationship, but many men and women that are in their late 30s, early 40s, they don't know about these biological changes that occur within the body.
Or that you need to work on stuff.
Yeah. And I asked him, I said, hey, was there anything major that happened in your marriage? No.
There has
Nothing major. There's kids involved. And I said, you didn't mess up real bad, what was the big cause? And he's like, no, man, she just doesn't want to be married anymore. I said, hey, bro, if you guys are on good talking terms and you think that she'll trust what you are asking, just tell her to get some blood work and have a doctor maybe explain to her why she's feeling the way she's feeling. Because maybe she's scared, and this is her way of pushing you away. Because at the end of the day, if the kids are with her a lot of the times, they're the ones that are now going to try to figure out what's going on with mom.
Yes.
And now there's fallout beyond just the marriage.
Yeah.
So, and it's kind of like, what you talk about in your book, with the fight or flight,
Yeah.
that we always are looking for this adrenaline, dopamine bump.
Yeah.
And when that's not met, you go out and do something that is going to meet it.
Yes.
That's usually unhealthy
And
unless
destructive.
it's jiu-jitsu.
100.
Unless it's jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
You're usually
Then you're
gonna go out,
humbled
and for many of us, I came from a background of drugs and alcohol. That's what we run to, or sex, or gambling, or
anything to fill
anything that's destructive.
Yeah.
Because it gives us that bump.
There was when you talked about the relationships, it's funny with the fight or flight response and getting into a new relationship. I'm noticing what will happen is people will not want to grow close to someone for the fear of a chosen abandonment. Meaning, like, so it's easy to say, all right, my parents didn't want me, or this person didn't want me, and you deal with that. But now to choose your wife and to have them leave you, it's the people who've dealt with abandonment, they can't bear that thought. They can't bear the thought that someone that I'm choosing to love would leave me. So it's almost easy. It's like a subconscious protection of, like,
sure.
Because I can't tell you how many times over the years I've had to tell myself, it's okay to fall in love with my wife. It's okay. It's all right. You're okay. It's okay to fall in love with her. Like, because I would want to keep her at bay and not be too vulnerable, not open, and it's so destructive.
For sure.
And so I guarantee if you talk to the husband, the wife, and it's amazing how our parent models matter. Like, I have 3 daughters, and someone recommended a book called Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters. The whole book is essentially what a strong father does statistically to a woman in her developing years. It's scary. It's frightening. Like, when the amount of women who've turned towards toxic relationships, drugs, prostitution, everything, just not having a healthy model.
Yeah.
And
I didn't learn it until later in life. I tell my youngest daughter, Michaela, I tell her this all the time. I said, you're probably going to get the best version of dad out of all the kids.
Yeah. You're like, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Like, do you know how hard we worked at this?
And I had to explain that to her. And I said, outside of the Bible, there's no book on how to be a good dad, right? Yeah. You just shared one, on how to be a better dad to a girl, right? Yeah. But you still have to invest the time and read. Many people won't read a book and want to better themselves in a way. In some of the Christian circles, if you go for anything outside of the Bible, then it's heresy, and so there's this constant push and pull to where you're just trying to figure it out on the fly sometimes as a parent. But our oldest daughter Taya she's up at CSU now.
That's awesome.
And man, I am grateful. As much as I screwed up as a dad with her, I did some things really good.
Yeah.
I didn't spoil the crap out of her, but, opened the door for her. We went on daddy-daughter dates a lot. I invested time with her, talked to her about relationships and, my shortcomings in relationships, what I've learned through that, and what I could teach her through that. And thank God, she didn't really date through she didn't date at all through high school, right? She's kept herself pure. And I believe when she tells me that, I believe it.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, man, I was a walking mess at her age, but I'm a man, but for her as a gal to navigate through some of the temptations and trials that we didn't have. We didn't have cell phones and computers. I didn't. If I wanted to go, meet a girl, I had to write her a note, like, tell your friend I like her, or something like that.
There's a comedian who talked about it. He's like,
now it's like you go on Snapchat or whatever other programs
ridiculous.
That they have, and it's it's kind of that was easy.
Yeah, this comedian just did a whole bit on it. He's like, you young people don't even get it, and he's like, in my day, if you wanted a girl's number, you had to walk up to her. You had to go, can I get your number? And she had to go,
character
no.
building.
Yeah, and that's what he said.
I heard that one too.
It was character building.
Yeah.
And it was
that was character building.
It's true.
You'd ask her friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was so true, right?
Yes.
You learned how to accept rejection.
Yes.
Where these days, when kids get rejected, they
left on read, and
they're done.
Yeah, you just go. It's ridiculous.
So it's they just go on Snapchat and find someone else to talk to.
My when we were talking just in regards to the relationships, I remember when we were engaged, my pastor said this to my wife one time, and I think about it all the time. When we were engaged, he came up to my wife and he said, now, Jen, I want you to think about this. When you get into this marriage and this relationship, you are just naturally going to become a wife and a mom. Like, you're not even going to have to try. You'll just become this person. But just remember, Matt doesn't know how to be a husband. He'll actually have to learn how. And at the time, what he said, I mean, it was heavy. I remember thinking about it, but over the years, man, that is dead accurate.
Yeah.
Like, I just had to drive to Littleton right now to pick up a piano because my wife just naturally creates this home of who she is. And men, we're in the wilderness and we're out there providing, and we're the fighters.
You guys paid like $100 for it.
Oh, dude.
I said they just didn't want to move that
That's
sucker.
true.
They're
That's
like,
exactly
let's
right.
Sell it for $100 and we'll get some other guy to.
You should have paid us to move that thing. It's the heaviest thing I've ever.
Yeah, well, Michaela plays, and so we have this little keyboard piano in the basement. But
dude,
yeah, my wife. I mean, to get we have a pool table that the person that lived in this house before us,
they left it.
They didn't want to. They didn't want to move it, man.
No one's gonna move it.
We try to move it just to make some room in the basement sometimes for kids to play, and it's like.
Forget it.
No wonder why they didn't take it.
Dude,
with
seriously.
them, you know?
I'm like, okay.
I think I'm going to pay someone $100 or sell it for $100 for them.
Chop it into pieces
when I'm ready.
I understand. And watching my wife become that, you know, like it's been amazing. But I realized the destructive patterns they want to come out all the time. Yeah. Like there's a party. Like I was on talking to this vet one time, and when I dropped the whole chaos thing and the self-sabotage thing, I just watched him it's like he wanted to stop. It was like an interview type thing, almost like this. And he almost wanted to stop it immediately because he was in the middle of, he had just gotten divorced, and he never made the connection. He never made the connection of all those years of his childhood. Mm-hmm. And then now doing what we do. So what my wife and I have been working on recently is we did a lot of work with a course called Reboot. So Reboot's a phenomenal organization where they have a course designed to help veterans overcome trauma from service. Could be like combat, non-combat, whatever.
You guys put it out, or
no, they put it out.
It's just called Reboot.
Reboot.
Yeah,
yep, Reboot.
Where can people find it?
So you can find it. I want to say it's rebootrecovery.com. Okay. And they have courses all across the U.S. They do it for first responders and veterans. So I didn't know this. I think on average, the number of first responder suicides is up to around 80 a day.
Good grief.
Because some of them mention this, they don't realize when a veteran goes to war, they're going to a desert across the country, but a police officer it's in their neighborhood.
Hey, bro, we share a common friend that works in this world, and I know that was a place that he wanted to go to a few times.
Yep.
You know, and this guy, you look at him physically, outwardly, and you go, man, this guy's a stud.
Right.
You know, he's got the perfect life. But then you start peeling some of the layers of the onions back, and you go, man,
there's stuff there.
Broken like me.
Yes.
You know? And
so there's two huge things to that. One is as we began working with the veterans, we realized a lot of what they needed to heal from was childhood trauma, not what they saw in Afghanistan, not what everything. It actually comes back to forgiving someone in their past. And then my wife and I helped design our own course here in the Springs called Healing Chaos, because we realized the power of Jesus, of what it's going to take for people to do that. And so we were facilitating Reboot, and then we kind of created a course to kind of help come alongside that at the end, where veterans can heal,
kind
move
of
on.
Follow up.
Yes. And then get, what's their vision? What's their... Yeah. And when you mentioned our mutual friend, so this just happened the other night. My son is 8, and we were talking... he got really angry about something, and he couldn't in the moment. He was so heated, he couldn't make right decisions. He was just, he's like me. He's mouthy, he's witty, and he's handsome, all those things, humble. Yeah. And so, but he was mouthing off about something, trying to be right, trying to this. And we were trying to be like, dude, you just shut up. Just be quiet. Stop. Your mouth is getting you in trouble. So later on, him and I left to go pick up dinner, and we're talking. And I thought about it at the time, because at one point I'd put a punching bag in his room. Mm-hmm. When he's upset, he can go up there and punch the bag and everything.
Instead of punching you.
Instead of punching me, yeah. And that wouldn't go well, I can assure you. So it's like my wife would be like, they're not Marines. You can't treat them like Marines. But I thought of this last night or the night before, and we started talking, and I said, you know what, Callan? I said, you have to realize is sometimes men, we get tricked into externalizing what we're feeling on the inside.
For sure.
So when we're feeling abandoned, when we're feeling used, hurt, angry, all these things, scared, we will go to the gym. We'll go punch a bag. We'll do all these external things, but you have to realize it will only make you feel good for a moment. And immediately at 8, he goes, you know what, Dad? When I had the punching bag in my room and I would get mad and I'd hit it, I would feel good, but only for a second.
Mm.
And I thought about it. I was like, man, how much of that does make sense? Is like something where if God is the Prince of Peace and he lives inside of us, then that's the answer. The answer is, how do we connect with our God? How do we bring the presence of God into those moments?
Yep.
And so I was trying to teach him, because a lot of times I was getting upset at him for reacting to things. And then it hit me. I was like, man, I've never actually taught him how to process the feeling. Okay,
sure.
You're in that moment right now. Now what do you do?
Yep.
And I must have been mad at him hundreds of times. And I'm like, oh, maybe I should just teach him one day. Like, what do I do when I'm upset? I go put on a worship song, connect with God, and it dissolves. The anger will dissolve. But if I were to go punch something, I never felt good after that stuff. Like
For a minute.
yeah. And then I'm like,
tired,
it's
and then
still
you're
there.
More aggravated.
Yeah, now you're just tired and
Hurt
angry.
my hand,
Hurt my hand, exactly. A hole in the wall.
That's a great story, because there's one of my neighbors over here also just retired from the Marine Corps.
Nice.
And he's got a son who's in our jiu-jitsu academy, and he was sharing with me. I had given them the whole Way of the Warrior. I buy,
Jocko's.
I buy like 10, 15 books of each of the series.
Nice. I only have one of them.
When I go to their events, and then at the Jiu-Jitsu Academy, if there's a kid that I see that, is either new or comes from a troubled childhood, or like just want to encourage dad, this is kind of like, one of his, retirement gifts.
Right.
Hey, read this to your son. And he started reading the books to him, and his son went to school, I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and ends up hitting a kid.
Wow.
And because the kid was picking on him, or, doing something he wasn't supposed to be doing. And the kid just kind of was, his kid was tired of it.
Yeah. Popped him,
right? And that's how we handled things.
Yeah,
I was in
right.
school, but nowadays it's just frowned upon. And he got a letter home, and I believe he hit him. It may have just yelled at him, but either or. So dad comes home and talks to the kid and says, why did you get upset? And the kid's trying to avoid it, thinking dad's gonna, lay into him.
Right.
And dad's explaining, hey, I'm not gonna get angry. I want you to understand what made you upset.
Yeah.
And he was able to go back, it was my ego, dad.
Wow, the self-awareness.
Well, if you ever read that Way to the World, like I learned stuff reading that book as an adult with my
I never
kids.
finished it. You convicted me now. I need to finish it.
And I'm just telling you, like the kid took some of the lessons, because he talks about when you start going into the red, and understanding why you're there, healthy ways of coping with the anger or the frustration.
Yeah.
And
simple as breathing.
And when he was sharing it with me, we were actually on a little rock around our development here. I was just like, I was blown away. I said, man, could you imagine if we had those tools growing up? Like,
wasn't even a topic.
It would have saved me a lot of grief, in my teenage years. I probably would have been a lot more mature when going into the military.
Yeah.
And even as an adult, I don't think I started learning that until my 30s and early 40s.
Yeah, it's like our generation.
Identify your feeling. Like,
yeah,
what? That's tough.
Mental health wasn't even a term back then.
But now, now I could say, I'm sad, I'm angry. You ask someone, hey man, how's it going? I'm good. That's not really an answer.
Yeah.
What does that mean? You're good.
How are you really?
Yeah, I'm content. I'm happy. Things are going well. Or
and there's a balance to it.
I'm really upset right now, or I'm depressed. Being able to just speak those things. That was looked at as a weakness for me growing up. You don't speak about your feelings. Men don't do that.
Yep.
But I realized that's just a temporary Band-Aid to mask something deeper going on in your heart.
I ruined my best friend's career in the Marine Corps because he was struggling with something, and I just happened to mention it to the wrong person in passing, and they ruined him, and I felt awful. And guys in my unit wanted to murder me. I felt horrible. He's one of my best friends, and then they ended up destroying his career. And then we obviously all got over it. We all stayed friends, and to this day, but back then it was like frowned upon. It's like, if you mention to anybody what you're struggling with, you won't be operational. Yep. You won't deploy. You're done. So guys would just compartmentalize. But that's a lie too. That thing will come up.
Well, guys readjusting coming off the deployment, right? It's like, just send them back out. Like that'll make everything better.
That's 100% true. Like, oh yeah, what this hangover needs is more alcohol. You're like, no, like
for sure,
get them healed. And so then there comes the balance of like, well, I've never been able to figure out the balance yet of like, hey, because right now I think it's almost switched to the other side, because I work with the installations, I work with veterans, and you can almost see like, oh my gosh, you're struggling with something, you should go talk to someone. Like, versus like, where's the balance between, hey man, hey, suck it up, princess, and actually, no, you should go talk to someone.
Yeah.
And I think there's just not enough good enough job being done. And I think the moment the church is pushed out of things, I mean, where Reboot started was the whole premise of the course, and they boast some intense numbers. They have about 13,000 graduates and 0 suicides. And because
that's amazing,
it's amazing what they're doing, because they're bringing in the whole premise of the course is, if a person can experience physical trauma, can they experience spiritual trauma?
Mm-hmm.
Can their soul be wounded? If your body can be wounded, then can your soul be wounded? And if it can be wounded, how is it healed? It's healed through Jesus. It's healed through restoration. And so that course, and another book, if anyone's listening, if you want a course that will completely give you the path of how to heal from trauma, it's called Living from the Heart Jesus Gave You. So it's written by 5 different doctors, all on the spiritual aspect of people that are healing. And then and this course led me to start writing Healing Chaos, which is the second part of Killing Chaos, going through the actual process of healing from wounds. Because guys need it, and it's heartbreaking, man. Like, there's a Marine that I knew in San Diego, and I didn't know him personally. We had just connected on social media, and I knew people who knew him, and he just killed himself. And everyone was shocked again. Like, he was an advocate in the community and outspoken, and all these guys are struggling internally. And something that frustrates me is I hate all these kind of, I work in mental health for a living with my job, but a lot of these places, are like, oh, if you're struggling, talk to someone. It's like, it sounds so nice, but you forget, like, this guy that you're talking about has already burned every bridge.
For sure.
He's already feels alone and isolated, and people don't want to be around him because he's struggling and he's dealing with these things. He doesn't know how to. So then what does that person do?
Or even trusting someone to share and being vulnerable. I mean, you talk about that also in Killing Chaos, right?
Yep.
Just to get to the point of being vulnerable.
Right.
And saying, hey, there's something going on right now.
I'm not okay.
And I'm not okay. And it's, and this isn't a blast on the church, okay? But there are a lot of churches out there that are ill-equipped
100%.
to handle trauma, abuse, and some of the other things that we see going on. Sometimes it's just the pastor, and he's already so busy, or trying to deal with 20 other things, not including running the church, that the time isn't given for proper counseling.
Right.
And it might be easy to say, oh, just go read the scriptures, and listen, the scriptures will fulfill you, right? But I've found it helpful to have someone that knows mental health,
yes,
right, and who may be trained in therapy to kind of walk you through some things. Scripturally based is great,
right?
And that's and I know that you work in this area a lot. Mr. Dave did as well. He was in the deliverance ministry.
Yes,
right.
That's
excellent. I said the problem with deliverance that I see is that you start unpacking. You get and I don't want to say an unqualified person to do deliverance. That's not the proper term.
I get what you're saying, though.
Right, but you get someone who went through a 30-hour course on deliverance, and now they're sitting down with someone that's got major trauma and abuse. And,
like
and
deep,
you're
dark stuff.
Unpacking all of this stuff, and you're identifying, different things that maybe, why they're experiencing these things. But then after the deliverance done, there's no follow-up. And that's why what you just said about the reboot follow-up.
Yep.
It's like, there has to be a follow-up.
Yes.
You're good now.
Good luck.
It's kind of like when you get saved, right?
Yeah.
I thought, and I had the same thing happen when I got saved. I got saved, and I'm thinking, I ain't going to sin no more. I kind of just went back to my same lifestyle.
Right.
But I'm just like sharing Jesus now in the moment of like getting drunk, right?
Yes.
It's like, you guys should know Jesus.
Yeah. And people are like, what are you talking about?
It sounds funny now, but it's because there wasn't instant follow-up.
Yeah.
But then I got connected with a group of guys, in a Bible study that discipled me well,
Real
and
discipleship.
mentored me well. And I find that if I don't have that in my life,
Yeah.
I could still be drawn back to those things, right?
Yeah.
So the follow-up it never ends. It's kind of like the learning process, right?
Yeah.
Of anything that you're jiu-jitsu. It's a perfect
Dude.
example,
Yes.
right? You become a black belt. Okay, cool. You just you're beginning to start learning again.
Yeah.
How to do things differently, or, grow from, maybe my game was this, for the last 10 years. Now I have to learn something new because these kids are coming out doing all kinds of crazy things.
Yeah.
And now, blue belts are killing black belts all over the mat, and they're saying belts don't matter.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's on me to continue to grow and learn. And listen, it's been a great coping mechanism for me, keep my ego down and to understand that, you never stop learning in life.
100%.
Right. It's like relationships.
Yeah. Right. I have a good friend of mine. He's, I want to say, I can't remember if it goes up to 4-stripe brown belt, but he's telling me, he's not even sure he wants his black belt because he just knows, because he's older now. And he's like, man, I just know these young guys would just
100%
come after me.
Hey, bro, I feel it every day. We get these kids. If I was a D1 wrestler, and I'm like, man, I don't want to go there today.
Smashing you,
I really don't want to go there today.
Separate,
and especially training for competitions. I don't know. You knew that I broke my finger, right?
No.
Yeah. So before Master Worlds,
break your finger.
We had a guy come to us from Miami, a black belt friend of Gigi's. My first time rolling with them, and I'm getting ready for Master Worlds, and we weren't going crazy. It wasn't like chaotic, death match. It was literally just kind of flow roll, but he elevated me, and I went to post, and my finger got caught in his gi, and it was like this.
Oh, man.
And of course, what did I try to do? I popped it back into place, said, let's keep training. And every time I went to go grab him, it went peek, it popped back out.
Swelling up like crazy.
This isn't good. I mean, I've done it to one of my other fingers before, but just, I just knocked it back into place and was sore for a week or two. But I knew there was a problem with this one. Yeah. And so I went to the doctor and I chipped the bone and tore ligaments on both sides. So they had to cut me open here and chip it back.
No way.
But
that's the perfect story, though, for what we're talking. So follow me. So when does a man know? That's the training a man needs. When do you know in the moment, I just need to push through this pain and get to wherever I'm going, or I need to stop and get
it's kind of like tapping in jiu-jitsu. Right?
Yeah.
That's our safety mechanism.
Yep.
And so, when you tap, that means I had enough. I find that even today, even just because, I train 2 or 3 times a day, either working out or, doing 2 sessions at the academy. I find that I tap a little bit more lately because, my goal in jiu-jitsu has always been sustainability. And if I'm in a bad situation, I don't want to make it worse, number one. And number two, if I'm in a bad situation, I put myself there. And so it was my fault.
Yep.
And I got to take one and go, good one,
100%.
I got to realize I made a mistake there and make note of it and hopefully not make it again, which usually doesn't happen,
Yep.
But it's, the same is true with this. I popped it back into place twice and I went, this is a problem.
Yeah.
This is probably
not
going to
get checked.
I need to go get it checked out, but
the longest injuries I've had in jiu-jitsu were when I tried to hold out
this
and
is the
not
first
and not
one
tap.
I've had, bro.
I was like
major. I mean, I've had some, a couple of
that's
sore knees
swollen,
and,
bro.
Elbows and shoulders there's something always hurting. If you train regularly in jiu-jitsu, I never wake up, unless I take like a week off of jiu-jitsu, I never wake up a day and go, oh, I feel great.
Yeah, yeah.
Usually it's like, dang.
Oh,
yeah, that's
dude.
stiff.
I think when I finally was training enough to where I thought, okay, I'm good. And then I went to my first competition this past year and I was in, and then of course I ended up taking a break after with scheduling. And then it was like my body just reset back to 40-year-old settings. I'm like, oh man, it's even harder now to get back in. Like, dude, your fist is kind of looking like those kung fu people, when they punch, they just keep punching stuff over and over and over.
Oh.
And
but it's almost embarrassing, right? Like my first major jiu-jitsu injury, my pinky finger.
I'm not even kidding. The first time I got back into it, whatever it was this past year, whatever, I think we were just practicing a fall or something, and I fell right into this dude's elbow, and my rib just separated right away. And man, I was like, I guess this is back. This is how we do it, because everyone wants to be like, oh man, jiu-jitsu, the gentle art. You're like, no, dude. I think I started a group at my church to funnel guys called Fight Club, where we would funnel guys to this Friday night group we have here in the Springs, where we all just roll together. Actually, man, you got to come. You got to come teach.
You're trying to get me hurt?
Yeah, dude, for sure. All these D1 wrestlers come.
Oh, yeah.
But basically, they come roll and then pray together. And, oh, man, I can't remember where I was going with this. The Fight Club. But basically, with the men coming together and having a place to train, oh, man, it's been a game changer. there was something along those lines. I can't remember what I was tying it back to, but I'll have to come back to it. But yeah, I understand. Like it's
But
changed.
even being selective with training partners sometimes, right? Like I'm training to do the comp next week,
Yeah.
right? And there's a couple of guys in the academy. Not that I won't train with them,
Oh,
but
same,
I either
bro.
have to have a talk with them beforehand,
Same.
right? Because now they want to tap the higher belt, 'cause
Mhm.
and I say, hey, listen, we'll do that after the tournament, but
Yeah.
my goal in jiu-jitsu obviously is sustainability at my age, right? I want to be really good at jiu-jitsu. I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to be out for a period of time because that never is well for me either.
Yeah.
If I take time off of jiu-jitsu, I'm depressed.
Oh, dude.
But, I'm pretty selective, or I have a chat, before I'd be like, God, let's just go, and then all of a sudden, D1 wrestling day starts to come out in someone and you're just like, relax.
Oh, yeah.
So I am a little bit more selective, especially around this time, especially, with the guy that I train with here, he was, he's a black belt. He knew what he was doing.
Right.
How did he know my finger was going to get caught in his gi? And then when
Yeah.
I posted and I'm looking at it going, yeah, that's not good,
Oh, man.
but things happen, that's an accident that can occur anywhere,
Oh, yeah. Oh, and now I remember now, it was the accidents. The group we had, the fight club, where we're funneling guys. I want to say it feels like every single guy who joined my group either broke something or injured something at some point.
Yeah.
Because just getting back into it, you just don't realize, I'm just going to train, I'm going to roll.
For sure.
And either some young guy was coming after them or they tried to pull some move too quickly. But I mean, that's life too. Like you got to recognize.
Well, again, it's kind of like, let's make the analogy with the therapists.
Yeah.
Or someone that's untrained in the church trying to walk someone through some major trauma or, life, damaging decision making that they did, right? I wouldn't have a new blue belt teaching someone how to do jiu-jitsu, right? Yeah. They know some stuff, but maybe not enough to keep everyone safe. When I was a blue belt, it was just like World War III on the mat with the other blue belt, right?
Just whoever.
You never wanted to bring someone in, for a jiu-jitsu academy tour when the blue belts were rolling.
Just ripping people to shreds.
It's forced right white belt, and now you're trying to get your blue belt and you're going to just go out and try to kill everyone. So it's kind of that same mentality, right? Like, hey, this is how you keep yourself safe in jiu-jitsu. Now, listen, when jiu-jitsu started, even back in the early 90s when it started getting popularized here in the States, it was like you go in and get your butt kicked and, if you get hurt, that's your fault for not tapping.
Right. Right.
And so, you have to educate people outside of just the physical aspects of jiu-jitsu. Just like you do with, again, if churches were transparent, like, hey, we're probably not properly equipped to handle this. This definitely is a spiritual sickness going on in your life.
Yeah.
But to walk you through it in a way that's going to give you long-term benefit, we might not be equipped for that, but here are some resources like the one that you mentioned that have had success in those areas. And so we're going to turn them over to you.
And that's wisdom if they can say that. Not all will say that.
It's wisdom, but think about it. And again, I say there's a lot of parallels in jiu-jitsu and life and faith. But even with the church, it's the ego. Oh, we're not equipped. We can't refer someone outside of the church.
That's how it happens.
Or, they said something weird one time, and so we're not going to. It's like, well, no.
Or are you a member of this church? And
yes. Is it helpful to them? Is it going to help someone? Because that's what the church's job is.
Yeah.
Right. It's a place for broken people.
The church is needing to move into a place where it's like an ER nurse.
Mm.
Nothing's going to shock an ER nurse.
Sure.
It's like they're in there. They know the trauma that's coming through the door. And so I think I've seen it happen where I've presented veterans that have been working with me to people, and you can watch their faces just like, the shock of like, what are you telling me right now?
Right. When if you meet a veteran, and I know you work with a lot of veterans, Matt, and you say, hey, it would be good to talk about your faith now, just like you did in your book, or even trying to get them through the doors of a church today.
Yeah.
What is the answer you get or the pushback that you're typically hearing?
Man, that's a great question. I'd say there's no one answer. I'd say for all of them, you almost have to read each person. It's like a quick diagnosis. Mm-hmm. So I met a veteran recently, and he opened up to me. So I went and spoke at this place. I'm doing my whole spiel. I'm hitting all the points. And I didn't know that I'm just speaking to this guy's life on every single area. So before I could even leave the room, he's in the hallway bawling to talk to me because he's suicidal, everything. And there's training. So if you haven't gone through a training like mental health first aid, assist, QPR, these are all great trainings that any civilian can take on how to handle someone in those types of situations, because there's a way to do things and there's a way not to do things. So he didn't have a plan. We weren't going to go down the road of emergency. But in that moment, we're trying to figure out, what do we do with this guy? And we had another guy was telling me, yeah, man, I've been trying to invite him to church. But I had to almost try to tell him, like, look, this guy is bleeding out on the field right now. Like, church isn't it. Like, this guy either needs like a one-on-one session, a session with me and a pastor and a team to be able to mess through this trauma, invite him into a community of guys where there's an accountability factor, and then give him the tools to be able to process on a daily basis. Like, how does he deal with his trauma? What does he do when the triggers hit? Like, there's a whole method to it. The church is great, but it's become this thing where you're like, hey, come to church on Sunday. And it's almost like we just want the pastor to do everything, or we want the church to do everything. Like,
well, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
Right. How many people are qualified in the church that can handle these things?
Right.
That may have been gifted in these things and they're not stepping into that calling or gifting.
Yes.
And again, this isn't to blast the churches. That's not what
just
this
a fact.
podcast is about. But just being properly equipped to be able to handle.
Yes.
You know, again, especially when it comes to veteran trauma, right? Because you're dealing with all kinds of stuff, right? You might be dealing with a 20-year Marine, right? Who's, I don't want to say brainwashed, but
fully brainwashed.
Not to be vulnerable, not to trust people, right? That everything's a threat. And so you're now inviting them into a public place where they have to be vulnerable, where there's a bunch of people and people want you to trust them because of the faith aspect.
Yes.
And you're forcing them into a really uncomfortable position, and many guys will just push back.
100%.
Right. Many gals will push back because there's guys and gals serving, you know, in capacities now. Does your wife deal with the female aspect of veterans?
She has definitely, she's worked with a lot
PTSD?
of the wives, not on a deep level like that, but more, and some of the female veterans too. There is some there. I mean, a lot of people know. I think
the wives, right? Reintegration. Right now, my husband's going to be home every day.
Yes.
Where I'd get rid of him for 6 to 9 months, and now he's back thinking he's the boss, and I've
destroying everything.
I've been shouldering everything for these last 4, 6, 8, 20 years, and so there's a lot. I mean, the veteran population. I'm hoping with the change in leadership in our country in the coming months, we'll see some more attention be placed on veteran health.
And I have to give props to you, man. You have a great heart, and you have something that most people wish they have, and that's someone who's authentic. That's why people gather around you. That's why so many people follow you, because they're like, this is a real guy who's not pretending to be someone he's not. He's just is who he is, and he understands his need for God, and he understands his shortcomings, and he's transparent about it, and he'll help anyone, and that means something. So for veterans, if you want to help veterans or anyone, being authentic is just about it. Like, I'm like a nerdy Ned Flanders, man. Like, I'm like, I could just play video games all day and watch Lord of the Rings and be cool, and I don't like beer. I like wine. I don't like football. I like watching tennis or soccer. I mean, like, just like who I am is,
you
like,
go against every stereotype.
I go against every stereotype. But what's funny is, once I embrace like the things that I truly love and the things that I don't, because I spent so many years pretending to like so much of that crap. Yeah. And I was like, I don't like any of this. But then once I finally embraced, like, man, I actually like this. I actually like this. And I was just the real me. It's amazing that every different type of veteran and person you could imagine was drawn, because they smell authenticity.
For sure.
Like, they don't care if you're different than them. They just care that you're being you. And it's like fruit on a tree. The guys who are probably needing the most help are in places where we need to go get them. I mean, vets aren't hard to find. They're going to be in a strip club, a bar, someone's couch, a gym, at their house. Like, there's not many places. For sure. Or they went into the 5 fields afterwards.
Like, being a veteran, it's easier to see other veterans.
Yeah.
I usually can tell.
That's true.
Especially if I'm...
You almost tell their rank.
If I'm at the gym, like a 24-hour fitness or wherever, and I'll just... Yeah, exactly. You can almost tell the rank,
Yes.
officer enlisted.
Yes,
Right.
100%.
So it just, and I'll ask them, hey, did you serve? And it's either they're in law enforcement or
Yep.
first responder, or yes, I served, and that's well, I'll open the door. Because our academy is basically to bring people in and expose them to a different lifestyle.
Right.
Right, a faith lifestyle. Right. We tell anyone's welcome to our jiu-jitsu. You don't have to be a Christian.
Right.
Same with our Boba Cafe.
But they'll know something's different about you guys.
You don't need to be a Christian come in. We've had people from alternative lifestyles come into the Boba shop because it's kind of one of those, it appeals to that population.
Yeah.
And they'll say, how come you don't have a pride flag on your door or whatever? And I'll say, listen, as a veteran, my wife and I will sit with her because she's a veteran too, right?
Yep.
We fought for your right to be able to put that on your car,
Do whatever you
your
want.
house. But we also fought for the freedom for us not to have to put it anywhere.
To do it. Yeah.
You're going to be loved when you walk through the door, regardless of your background. As long as you're not hurting anyone in here or making fun of anyone or forcing something on anyone.
Yeah.
You're welcome to come in here and be loved on just like everyone else.
Yeah.
And so, the same with veterans. It's like, usually they're, for us, it's just go get a pump and, just get rid of some of this, excess dopamine and, hurt and baggage that I've been carrying around, for all these years. And so we want to give them a healthy outlet to be able to do that.
Man, I wish I was closer to your gym, man. Like it's awesome. If you haven't been to his academy in Castle Rock, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, we've got great people, right? I mean, that's at the end of the day, we just, some academies, someone will come in and go, you could tell those guys are of faith. It's like, okay.
Oh yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah, what is it?
That we're bad at jiu-jitsu? Or we're going to give you some sound advice if you ask us for it. Because usually, like I've mentioned before, I try not to give someone my opinion. I'm usually going to say, here's some biblical advice, or here's what I've learned from doing something stupid,
Hopefully they're open to listen to you.
And this is what I learned from it. Even the guy that came to me was talking about divorce. It's like, I'm going to say, well, yeah, man, go live your best life now. It's like, man, is there any chance for reconciliation? Because listen, I told this to someone the other day. I said, I did everything you could to wreck a marriage. Anything. And you think of it. And we just made a decision to stick it out. I mean, we made that recommitment. We just celebrated 20 years in September.
Come on, it's awesome.
We just made that recommitment again. But it's one of those things you go, we can do this.
Yeah.
We've been through everything. And so there's nothing that we're going to face that's going to take us down,
Yeah.
So
and it's a decision.
And we're both willing to continue to learn and grow. And I think when you have that heart in a relationship, whether it's, being married or with your kids, I talked to a guy the other day. He's like, his kids won't even talk to him. And I'm like, that's on you, bro.
Yeah.
Like,
It's the
if your
saddest
kids
thing
aren't
ever.
talking to you,
It's my nightmare.
no, their mother this and this. And I was like, no.
No, bro, this is you.
I said, she's going to still talk, but your actions are going to speak louder than her words. And I said, so if you just get with them and say, what did your mother say about me? And, like, I can't believe that. And I'm not going to buy you this because I give her enough support. Like, now you're just fighting an ego game. Just love your kids. Love them and show them that you're spiritually healthy, and take them on the journey with you.
The amount of broken men, man. Like,
well, you know why? Because when we get hurt, we become jerks. The times I'm the biggest jerk is when I'm hurt or scared.
it's true.
That's it. And my wife and I have talked about it. She, if I get angry, or if I'm being a little stubborn about something, she goes, what's going on with you?
Yeah.
Like something. Usually it's something like with the business, or maybe I was just hurt from a friend. Like that I trusted. But she can tell it's hurt or scared.
And there is a two-way street to marriage. There's like a culture right now where it kind of bothers me. Maybe this is my own past hurts coming out. But, like I see, some of these videos of like a wife complaining about their husbands and them, whatever, being the way that they are and how they are. And there's always a constant theme in the comments of women being like, well, like, oh, I wish my wife was romantic with me. Well, did you do something to make her want to be romantic to you. You're like, oh, my wife had this.
Yeah,
say,
I took my
well,
clothes off
yeah.
and walked out of the shower and said, here you go, honey.
And swung around. It's like, so there almost is like this thing of like, okay, not everything falls on the man to help a woman. Like, well, did you create the environment for your wife? Like yes. Yeah. So I think there's this culture where it's like the man is not meant to do everything. There's a woman must have her own regulation too. She must deal with her own trauma too. Because if one of those people is broken, their trauma will keep presenting in the relationship, and the other person will feel like a crazy person. They'll be like, dude, I know this is not how it's supposed to be. You're acting like your mother, or you're acting like this, and this is not, your logic is completely flawed. And there's all these things. So I can understand to some extent where there could be a person who's dealing with someone who's incredibly toxic, incredibly traumatic, and that person needs help too. So it's both sides. Like, it can't just all be on the husband to say, man, you need to go home and lead your home. Okay, no, there needs to be some recognition here of where the litmus test is in your marriage. Can she deal with criticism? Can she deal with hurt? How does she process, does she have time with God? And do you have time with God? Yeah. Do you like, those are two, because when you have two healthy people, then just like your wife can come to you and go, hey, are you okay? Yeah. Versus her being like, you need to, blah, blah, blah. Like,
but isn't that what happens? It's funny, when you get saved, it's kind of like, yeah, you're not reading your Bible enough, Yeah. It's like
you're projecting out.
You've been the extreme ownership or the musters, right? Right. So it's the same thing when you read extreme ownership. You're not taking ownership. You start pointing at the other person,
like the log
doing
sticking out of your eye,
what it's telling you not to do, right? Yes. In the book. And so, yeah, it's definitely a challenge.
That's the biggest thing I see people do. That's my biggest check for people. Yeah. So this guy years ago, I don't even know if I should share this, but there's all these little tricks. I'll teach a couple. I'll teach a couple off camera. But there's a couple things that I do to read people that someone taught me years ago. And there's all types of little body language tactics that you can use, and I use it on everyone every day. And once you turn it on, you can't turn it off. It's really annoying. You'll have to tune in for another episode to hear the rest. But one of them is the projection. The projection is where I know exactly where their heart is right away. Because let's say, whatever, all of a sudden someone came in and was just blew up off the handle. Their emotions went to an 11 and they just started blowing up about an issue and started accusing this person of something. Mm-hmm. You see it on social media all the time. Like, this person is so hateful and intolerant and I can't believe them, blah, 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 blah. Well, there's a solid chance that person is hateful and intolerant and racist and whatever this case 100%. Is, because that's how we deal with stuff. It's like we're externalizing what we're feeling. Yes. Like, and I see it on you. It's like when that UFC fighter, gosh, man, I always forget his name. Is it Chael? Where he was like ripping on someone for steroid use, and then he popped like however long later for his fight. And he's a great fighter, but it's a perfect example of like he's projecting what he was going through himself, and you're like,
it's not steroids, it's Jesus jiu-jitsu.
That's it. Jesus.
And acai.
Yes, acai. Yes, the real stuff. Yeah. And it's like everyone goes through it. Yeah. Like, everyone's got their junk, but I think I'm glad to see the lids coming off. Like, people aren't scared to talk about stuff anymore. There's a lot. The church is kind of rising up into a lot of ER nurses are becoming spiritually prepared to deal with some of this stuff, because it's gotten intense.
It has.
Yeah,
for sure.
I appreciate you, man.
Oh man, I appreciate that you made the trip.
Same, bro.
Even though you were on your way back.
The piano made it happen. Yeah.
And the boba shop's closed today, so I couldn't meet over there. But man, it's so good to see you. We usually wrap up the show with a little nugget of wisdom. Yeah. And I don't know if God's put something on your heart, this week or over the course of these last few months. We haven't seen one another, but. A story that I really enjoyed in your book was the exercise that one pastor took you through.
Oh my gosh.
Inviting Jesus into the mansion.
Yeah.
Right. And kind of going through each of the rooms. If someone wants to read it in your book, that's great. But if that's on your heart to share, that ministered to me a lot, because there was a lot of doors locked and closed.
Yes.
Padlocked, double, that I didn't want to open.
I would love to share that part. So the premise of it is really, it kind of stems again from that book, Living from the Heart Jesus Gave You, where it breaks down two types of trauma A and trauma B. So right now I'll just talk about what trauma B is. Trauma B would be what's considered like a brutal trauma. B for brutal, meaning like physical
and
abuse.
Let me just make the disclaimer. You don't have to be a veteran to have experienced trauma.
100%.
Even though that's a majority of the people that you minister to. So if you're listening and you're saying, well, I'm not a veteran, you may have experienced some trauma. So we want to make sure that you understand that this applies to you as well.
Yes, thank you for clarifying. So he does this exercise where essentially he would paint a picture, have like it'd be an environment. So let me backtrack real quick. There's a huge key in Christianity where everything in the kingdom moves in and out of an atmosphere. I don't have time to go into the depth of that, but it's where things move in and out. And so you must create an atmosphere if it's not there already, or go to a place that has the atmosphere to have the movement, essentially, with the free flowing. And so once that environment of worship is created and the presence of God can rest, then he invites people to envision this mansion where there's all these locked rooms. And what you end up doing is, as this progresses, you revisit some scary moments in your life, some very scary moments. But you find the way he does this is that Christ is actually present with you in the vision. It's like the memory is relived with an addition. And it's like he's there, and there's something about it. It's like every ounce of power that memory has had on you for decades is suddenly not that powerful. Like it's not that loud anymore. It's just not even that big of a deal anymore. And it's like the very presence of Christ, because if the Bible says that every knee must bow to him, that when he's present, it finally can go away. Because there's you're not going to medicate it. You're not going to forget about it. There has to be a reconciliation. There has to be that salvation of it. And so the redemption, that he's the great redeemer, that's what he's redeeming. And it was the most intense, amazing encounter with God I've ever had. And so that can be redone anywhere. Yeah. And so, because the two things that most people need is to understand forgiveness and to let Christ redeem what's happened to them.
That's a great way to end. Understand forgiveness.
Yeah.
And understand that Christ came to redeem.
Amen.
Well, it's good to be back, everyone, and I'm excited and grateful that Matt was the first one back.
Same, man.
For this podcast, and I've shared this with a couple of people, because a lot of guys have been asking me, "Hey, man, when are you gonna fire the podcast back up?" Yeah. And this year has been extremely difficult. Yeah. Lost two of my closest friends to cancer. We were navigating some things in our family. We started a boba cafe, broke my finger. I mean, it's just been one thing after another. Yeah. And at one point I just went, I want to represent the Lord well if I'm going to do this, and I don't know if I could do that where my heart's at right now.
I get it.
But I'm grateful for guys that have been asking, and pray that this just blesses them, and the gals too. I've had wives go, "Hey, I listened to that podcast, and really helped me understand how to walk my husband through some things." So we love you guys, and we'll see you next time.